A Kingfisher and I are confounded. Mark Twain said golf was a good walk ruined. I've been having bad luck with my good walks ruined by something else. Some guy in a Shakespearean comedy once said something like, "Let me embrace thee, sour savagery, for wise men say it is the wisest course." I'm not going to look that line up because it probably doesn't say that exactly, and I want to bend it to my own purposes here. But the gist of it has been my new policy for a while now, and I am struggling to maintain it. The savagery that is my bête noire is the old red in tooth and claw problem that Tennyson expounded on, applied to nature itself. I don't like it that I'm watching a butterfly sip at a wild clematis and a bulleting shrike snatches the lovely thing off the incandescent bloom and pins it to a locust thorn for later consumption. It always seems so sudden. But I have decided to accept it as best I can. And above all, not to try to do anything about it in those few instances where an interference action is presented. Leave me in peace, I say to nature. I'll watch and enjoy the parts that I can. Although it may not be easy. For instance, I don't think Tennyson himself was being totally forthright in his accommodation with savagery. I've looked into it a bit, and I think that his almost triumphant accepting admission may have sprung from bitterness as a diversion to alleviate the pain from the death of his friend, a friend who expired by reason of no good external cause. An instance of savage assault is all the worse if there is no predatory ogre to blame. I hate to quote everybody on this matter, but it seems to indicate that mine is not a solitary concern, even if I disagree with the others' accommodation. I certainly don't agree with James Dickey, who writes in his poem, The Heaven of Animals, that, quote, "Those that are hunted know this is their life," unquote, which I resist, as do they, when they scream. Anyway, I don't like it. I don't like that the perfectly lovable animals, ourselves included, find it necessary to kill and eat other animals. There, I said it. Never have, never will. But I have and will stop trying to do something about it in specific instances if I can. That's what an observer of life is supposed to do, right? Unless there is some clear and present moral imperative. So, take just the other day. As I got to the lake, a kingfisher fell out of his invisible chair in the clear blue sky and hit the water like a three-legged dog chasing a rabbit in a mound of kudzu vines. So it impressed me. There was a lot going on there in that tangle of waves and foam, and it was hard to figure out exactly what it was. But nobody was giving up. I watched. This is what nature is all about. The bird then launched upwards from the surface like a Trident II missile on a necessary mission of certainty. Clamped in his industrial-grade beak was a flashing silver minnow, struggling to make sense of this new turn of events involving, presumably, unjustified retribution from the sky. Sure, I thought, eaten in a tumultuous onslaught of surging green by a bass or a pike, or even sucked over a waterfall, or cut off in a branch of the lake that dries up. He could certainly get that. But this, hit from above by a bright blue and white whirling feathered dragon on a bright summer day, and carried off into the unbreathable stratosphere. Who's guarding against that? I started to feel for the shining bright jewel of a minnow. But did I try to do anything about it? No. Like the Cherokee, who have this system of friendship with the animals, where they respect the ones they have to kill and admire them, as well as the ones who will kill each other. A little unbalanced, I always thought, from the human point of view. We kill the deer and the occasional cougar gets one of us, but at least they're trying. The Cherokee have this whole mythology where all the animals and themselves are friends, even amidst the ugly necessities of life. I myself, for instance, have always carefully released any fish that I was not going to eat. It seems like some kind of desperate attempt at limited virtue, but it's not nothing. And if some wheedling charity dedicated to teaching the kingfishers to be vegetarians knocks on my door, I confess I would be on board. Anyway, I knew what the fate of this squirming fingerling was to be. And again, it wouldn't be pretty. The king would level off and home in like a B-25 directly back to base on a convenient limb, and there dash the brains out of his captive on said limb, and then wiggle him nose first down his throat to dissolve there in the gastric glue. I don't like it. He's simply following the procedure of his many homologous practitioners throughout the avian kingdom. Homologous means they all do the same thing, no matter how unrelated or disparate the paths by which they ended up doing it. Has to do with efficiency and survival. So whether you've been lifted by gull or hawk or crow or heron, if you're a minnow, you can expect your head to be bashed. And the reason, of course, is, or has been, I should say, over the course of evolutionary millennia, to prevent your getting away before you get dismembered and or gulped. There is no room for compassion or regret in the halcyon line. Halcyon, that's Latin for kingfishers. It may have been pronounced halcyon, something about calming the deep sea. Although one of the Pleiades did drown herself in grief after her lover went down with a ship in a kingfisher-related capsization event. So maybe there is something of an offset there. In any case, I knew what was ahead for this pretty fish, and I wasn't happy about it. Majestic as the fisher himself was, with his regal colors and acrobatic flight. But apparently I wasn't the only one who felt this way, although there may have been different motives involved. An ebony torpedo of a purple grackle fired his own projectile self out of a lakeside birch tree and sideswiped the fisher, causing him to drop his prize. The emancipated sardine, though unable to soar like his pelagic flying fish cousins, nonetheless fluttered downwards like an autumn leaf and settled on the shore only a few feet from the water's edge, where he commenced flipping and flopping, but without progressing shoreward to his native element. The fisher himself had vanished over the forest horizon. And I broke. It had happened before, and it probably would happen again. I may not have intervened in the initial scrimmages of that oceanic battle as the grackle did, but I did now. And that grackle's action wasn't just to steal the prize, I will tell you. Else, why did he not wheel and pounce on the helpless finned one as it struggled in the gravel on the strand? He merely circled and returned to his Frostian birch copse. Maybe he was only defending his immediate airspace from intruders, and success there was good enough. I don't know his motive, but I was forced to abide by mine. I waded across an unexpectedly deep and mucky channel, and after enclosing my hands around a puddle of sky-reflecting water, I ladled that minnow back into the shallows, where he paused like a fish often does when released from a battle with a fisherman's hook, and then he vanished with an electric flip of fins and tails. As somebody, Kurt Vonnegut maybe, said, though I don't cotton to being associated with him either, so it goes. But I'm not giving up. The minnow was a dace. I determined that later by consulting my guide to the fishes. Probably a red belly or laurel dace. And I couldn't stop myself from thinking, at least there's this one small thing I've done. And I have long since now felt, perhaps like the Cherokee, that my friends, the dace, have watched me when I pass their stream, and they consider me their friend.